That radio chick Cheryl Lee here. Welcome to the Still Rocking It podcast, where we'll have music, news reviews and interviews with some of our favourite Australian musicians and artists. Deborah Conway has been a stalwart of the Australian music industry since she picked up a guitar at the age of 18 and joined the Benders as a vocalist while still at uni. She has not stopped performing and is about to embark on her next collaboration. Join us now as we chat to Do Re Mi lead vocalist Deborah Conway. To catch up on podcasts from other favourite artists, simply go to thatradiochick.com.au. You're with Cheryl Lee, That Radio Chick, and I'd like to welcome into the Zoom room with us today, Deborah Conway. Thank you for spending some time with us today, Deborah.
Pleasure, Cheryl. Nice to be here.
We've got an exciting new collaboration to talk about, but I'm just wondering if we can go back a little bit before we go forward.
Of course.
You picked up a guitar at aged 18, which is sort of actually a little bit later than usual, and your dad didn't like you being involved in music. What made you pick up that guitar?
My father was upset when I joined a band. I don't think he particularly cared one way or the other if I picked up a guitar. I'd had piano lessons when I was a kid too. It wasn't music per se. He loved music. He had he had a huge record collection, a vast array of music theatre albums, which I used to love listening to when I was a kid, and lots of soundtracks of things. And there was always music in our house. It wasn't music per se, but I think the idea of the cultural wave of rock and roll and everything that implied, the rebellion of youth and the potential of getting involved with the wrong kind of people, drugs and sex and all of those things.
The lifestyle
that rock and roll is renowned for. He didn't understand it and he found it too challenging, and I guess he had different kinds of ideas about how I might grow up in the world, and he would have loved for me to be a lawyer. He thought, well, maybe she should see a psychiatrist just to make sure that everything's working properly. So I saw the psychiatrist and we decided that it was my father's problem.
Very good. What made you pick up a guitar at aged 18? Because quite often musicians bang on the mum saucepans, as a toddler.
I have a photo of when I was, I think I was about 4 or 5 years old, with a baton in my hand, conducting the Bialik kindergarten, orchestra or whatever it was. So it was always coming. I guess, at 18, I was listening to a lot of Bob Dylan and Joni Mitchell, and not Joni particularly, but Bob always seemed pretty conquerable, if you like. I mean, they were just farmers' chords, and you could kind of get around them pretty easily. I had friends who loved that stuff too and were happy to show me how the chords worked, and I picked up a lot from them. I don't know why I didn't pick it up earlier. At 18, I was earning money, and so I could buy myself a guitar. I guess that was what I wanted to do, so I did. I didn't have guitar lessons until a lot later than that either. So, it was I was self-taught, and I didn't progress particularly quickly, and I never thought of myself as a particularly good guitarist, but a guitar is a very useful thing to be able to compose on. So you don't have to be a particularly good guitarist in order to be able to construct something that you can sing something over.
I'm only jealous because I've never picked up a guitar, and I'd love to. I'm 60 next year. Is it too late for me?
Never too late, Cheryl. Never too late.
You joined a band and then you formed Do Re Mi, which you had your biggest hit on the Kent Music Report, number 5, Man Overboard. Did you write that song?
Well, we all wrote. Dolan and I were primarily responsible for the lyrics. Helen and Stephen primarily responsible for the music. The thing was that the track came out in 1980, 81 or 82 maybe. Initially it was a punk thrash piece. It was only when we heard it so many times, we put out this EP. It was a 12-inch piece of vinyl, but it was recorded, it was supposed to be played at 45 RPM, which is traditionally what you would play a 7-inch single at. But the DJs kept getting confused. It was the early days of EPs. So they'd continually play it at 33 and a third RPM. And we would hear it slowed down all the time, which gave us the idea to try slowing down this track. And that was the version that we recorded for Domestic Harmony, which came out in 1985. That was very successful, and it was a very unusual track. I think it's It's definitely endured the test of times very successfully. It's still a big favourite at live shows for me. The lyrics still sounds fresh and relevant.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
Let's hear that hit now. It's the first Australian hit to include lyrics referring to anal humour, penis envy and pubic hair. And it also has no chorus. 1985 Countdown Music Awards Best Debut Single, Man Overboard.
Shout man overboard. Come around when I'm asleep.
A lot of people may not know this. I'll admit that I didn't. Apart from being a rock singer, songwriter and guitarist, you were also a model and an actress. You've done a lot of stuff, Deborah.
I've done a lot of stuff. I'm restless. I'm a restless soul, and I like to keep challenging myself. The modelling was never a career as such. It was just a way of earning money and being able to move out of home, and I was being paid incredibly well to just walk up and down a catwalk or pose in nice woolly knits for Patton's books. And I did lots of TV stuff. It was a very, very lucrative, well-paid bar work.
Yeah. As an alternative to pulling beers.
Yeah, exactly. It was a very successful alternative to pulling beers. And then when I was cast in this film called Running on Empty, I said to myself, if I get the film, I think I was about 23 at that point. And I said to myself that if I got the film, I would give up modelling because the film paid incredibly well. And so I did. I gave up modelling. I did the film. And then after that, I could devote myself to music, which is what I wanted to do. I also recorded the soundtrack of Sweet and Sour.
That's right.
Nobody really knew that because I didn't put my name on it. But that was also a lucrative thing to do. So all of the years of penury, playing in a band with Do Re Mi, we were able to be supported by the other side gigs that I was doing.
Yeah, so, the peripheral stuff.
Yeah.
You had, as you mentioned, the role of Julie in Running on Empty and the Sweet and Sour. You also played a little role in the Coca-Cola Kid as well.
Very little. I get a big close-up. Dusan Makaveyev, what a crazy guy. It's an interesting tale, the Coca-Cola Kid. It's an Australian story by Frank Morehouse, actually. And for some reason, Dusan Makaveyev, who's an exotic European director, kind of took a shine to it. And Frank wrote the screenplay. And then Greta Scacchi, who I was good friends with at that time, was cast as the love interest. And I don't know, I guess I was just hanging around, and I got a role too. I'm not exactly sure why that happened. I think it was just sort of right time, right place, but it wasn't really a role. A lot of the things that I did at that time were just kind of standing around, looking like a clothes horse and whatever. Yeah, interesting. I barely remember it. I wouldn't mind seeing it again, actually.
I wonder if we could find something on YouTube.
Maybe it still exists on some European foreign movie channel, although it is an Australian film.
Still Rocking It podcast with that radio chick Cheryl Lee. Well, I did happen to find a little bit about the movie. The trailer, actually, here's a little snippet, and the jingle was written by Tim Finn. So you can track the 1985 movie down if you're keen. Tim Finn also composed and wrote a couple of the songs on the soundtrack. I couldn't track them down, so let's just have his Fraction Too Much, Friction, and we'll be back again to speak to Deborah straight after this.
Wanna go where there's no Coca-Cola? Slide by the road when you drink it, slide by the road when you drink it, slide by the road when you drink it.
What's your name?
You can call me the Coca-Cola Kid.
Eat you up with this, let go!
Eric Roberts and Greta Scacchi in the Coca-Cola Kid.
There's a fraction too much friction. There's a fraction too much friction, yeah.
And one thing that I found really interesting, over the years, lots of people have had the pleasure of collaborating with you. And one thing that I found really interesting was the 1986 The Rock Party.
I don't know that one.
Oh, a charity project by the National Campaign Against Drug Abuse.
1986 is an awfully long time ago. I can't remember. Maybe I was. I can't remember it. But what caught your eye about it?
that it was a great cause to get behind. Apparently, well, the guys from Crowded House were involved, the guys from Ganga Jang and some Mental as Anything guys, and Paul Kelly and Jenny Morris, and you released a 12-inch single, Everything to Live For, and it was a campaign initiated by the Campaign Against Drug Abuse.
Maybe it was just one song sung in a studio. I'm struggling to remember it, but I wasn't around for long in 1986. I was spending a lot of time in Europe, so it must have been, a very quick stint.
Well, great cause to be involved with anyway.
Good for me.
On you, Deborah.
There you go.
Do you remember this one? Because this was interesting as well. But again, it's a little while ago, involved with Pete Townshend's Iron Man project.
Oh, yeah, that's very memorable. He invited me to participate in this album that he was making, which was based on a Ted Hughes short story. Ted Hughes was the poet laureate at the time, and this was a kind of a mythical tale of a young boy who rescued an iron monster who needed to eat iron in order to live, and the townspeople were getting very fed up with him because he kept on eating their fences and their tractors, and they trapped him in a ditch and tried to bury him. And then at some point, a space dragon came down to shoot lasers at Earth, and it was the Iron Man who was able to rescue Earth and, fight the monumental battle that needed to be fought with the space dragon. So it was all very odd. And I was playing the part of the vixen, which in my memory doesn't even figure in the actual
storyline.
In the storyline at all. Other people on the album included Nina Simone and John Lee Hooker, and I was never in the same studio at the same time with any of them, but at least, I'm on the same album cover, which is nice. And I was in the same studio as Pete Townsend when we were recording it, and it was really fun to record it. Sadly, the album was initially intended as a double album, and it became a single album probably because of budgetary constraints, and therefore it really never made any sense. And so it was, I guess, a boutique, shall we say, a project for Pete.
Yeah.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
So without any further ado, I think we'll play the first track of that album from 1989, The Iron Man, the musical by Pete Townsend. It's called I Won't Run Anymore. Vocals by Pete Townsend and Deborah Conway. Back to speak more with Deb shortly.
We're not gonna run anymore. We're not gonna run anymore.
Just like to congratulate you on a couple of strings in your bow. 1988, Rolling Stone Australia named you the best Australian female singer. 1992, best female artist at the ARIAs. I'm working my way forward to 2000 because you played Patsy Cline.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
That was a fabulous role to play. Those songs are amazing. She is one of the classic all-time great vocalists that the world has witnessed, and I got to play her. It was fairly daunting. It was a very daunting task. At some point, I just told myself, it's okay, I'm never going to be Patsy Cline. All I can ever do is try and honour her legacy. So I relaxed after that and realised that, whatever it was going to be, it was going to be me. I wasn't going to be able to conceal me entirely. And I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. We did it was about 5 or 6 months around the country, long stints in every major centre and a few regional centres as well. And it was a brilliant cast, and it was just a pleasure to be able to sing those songs every night. And of course, I also had 3 children under 5, and the idea of being able to get full night's sleep while Willie was doing all the hard yards, that was also incredible.
I've got 3 girls as well. I take my hat off to you. Congratulations. We've got to get on to your new collaboration, which sounds really interesting. We want to know all about. One other thing that I really liked was the Broad Festival program.
That was fun too. That kind of grew out of the whole summerwear thing. And my most recent project, of course, which you may or may not mention, is that I've written a memoir, which I assume you've read because you're getting all this information. Well, I didn't mention the campaign for drugs and stuff in this because I didn't remember. The Book of Life memoir came out in October just recently, and I do talk about the Broad Festival. And as you would recall, there was a kind of a trajectory from the summerwear parties, which we were doing when we first went independent, and we were paying for everything ourselves without a record company. And these were all ways of experimenting with trying to find new ways to play music, find new ways to connect and communicate with audiences. And the Summerware Party was one. And then Broad kind of came out of that, having seen the success of how people could respond and warm to the breakdown of the barriers between performer and an audience. It was great to do that on a larger scale and have the breakdowns between performers, all the performers on stage, and then all the performers and the audiences in turn. So the idea was to explore the idea of female singer-songwriter, which always sounded like a fairly monolithic category to me. And I wanted to just introduce the idea that female singer-songwriters are across a broad range of genres.
Yeah.
And they can work together and they can work separately, and we can all discuss our craft and we can collaborate on each other's music. And it made for a very emotive experience, actually. It really was beyond the sum of its parts. And we ran these shows for 4 seasons, and there were terrific artists that came out of that and went on to become huge superstars, actually. Like Kate Miller-Heidke was really young when had barely begun. Claire Bowditch had only just begun her career. Mostly people were kind of, just very fresh. It was terrific, yeah.
Still Rocking It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. I think we should have a Patsy Cline song. How about Stupid Cupid? And back to speak some more to Deborah Conway shortly.
Hey, set me free. Stupid Cupid, stop picking on me.
There's so much to the Deborah Conway story. So do get last year's memoir. It's called The Book of Life. Find out all about it. And some other interesting things. For instance, a portrait of you as Medusa, finalist in the Archibald Prize in 1996.
You've really gone deep, haven't you?
Yeah. Go hard or go home. That's my motto.
Aren't you, Cheryl?
2022, another portrait was another finalist in the Archibald Prize. That year you were also inducted into the Victoria Music Hall of Fame. Congratulations. That's a very quick, speedy Deborah Conway history.
It is. Good stuff. Well done.
That brings us to your current project. You are singing some Carole King songs and James Taylor songs and taking that around the country. How did that come about? Why Carole? Why James?
This was not my idea particularly, but I am a good friend of the musical director, whose name's James Black. James Black might be recognised by some of your viewers, listeners, as the keyboard player in Rock Whiz with a cowboy hat. Anyway, he's a very old friend, very dear friend of mine, and he was approached by the producer of this show and, was he able to suggest someone to sing Carole? And he just said, Deborah do a great job. So I was contacted and I said, yeah, I'd love to do it because I love those songs. Tapestry was one of the first albums. I think it was, in fact, the first album that I ever bought with my own money. And I I didn't need to. I just ingested all those songs easily because they were so catchy and they just spoke to me. There was a moment, I was like, 12 years old or something, and they were fantastic. And so it was very easy to get enthusiastic about that. And there's a terrific young man called Deborah Conway who's playing James Taylor, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And we haven't begun rehearsals yet, so I can't tell you exactly, how it's going to, what the shape of it will be. I know I kind of roughly know, but I do know that my aim is to get on that stage and every single song is going to make people smile and go, oh, I love that one. And that's the kind of show that I really want to do. Cheryl, it's time.
Darren, he's a little bit country, but he's also got some hidden talents. Like he played Richie Cunningham in the Happy Days musical, and in Grease he played Teen Angel and Vince Fontaine. He's also done a theatre show called Moon Shadows with Cat Stevens. So he's a versatile young man.
He's a very good choice.
We can't wait to see you guys together. Get onto the Googleometer and track down when Darren Coggan and Deborah Conway are going to be in your neck of the woods, and grab your tickets and I'll see you down the front.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
From the 1971 Tapestry album Now, Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow, Carole King. And back to say farewell to Deborah Conway shortly.
Will you still love me tomorrow?
question, Deborah, if we've got time.
Yep.
When you're driving in your car or in the shower or wherever it is that you get to listen to what you want to listen to, what's on your playlist?
A lot of Carole King at the moment.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, I loved Paul Simon's last record. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, Seven Suns. But I also went back in time and listened to Graceland again, which was one of those records when it came out in 1986. I would crank it on the stereo, throw open all the windows and just have it blasting out into the ether, into my neighbourhood. No one ever complained either. I listen to a lot of podcasts. Yeah, I know. I mix it up a bit. I take recommendations. If people say, oh, you've got to hear this, I'm very interested in hearing whatever this might be.
Thank you for spending so much time on a busy time for you, I'm sure, with us today. And we wish you and Darren all the best for a successful tour, and we can't wait to see it.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. I do note that there is a guitar in the corner of your room, so if you're not playing it, someone must be.
That's not real.
Oh, isn't it? It's a very good impression of a guitar.
It's actually a CD player.
Oh, is it really? Quite nifty then.
Yeah. Thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate it.
That's a pleasure, Cheryl. Thank you for talking to me.
Still Rocking It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. Let's go out with Under My Skin, a song by Australian singer-songwriter Deborah Conway, released as the second single from her debut studio album, String of Pearls, in 1991. You're with Cheryl Lee, that radio chick. Thank you so much for joining me on the Still Rocking It podcast. Hope to catch you again next time. Get out when you can, support Aussie music, and I'll see you down the front.